doesn't mean you could be late. Okay, it is Tuesday, December 3rd, 2019 at 7:30, and I'd like to call the City of Twinsburg regular council meeting to order. Shannon, would you call the roll?
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes, here.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Ms. McFerrin? Mrs. Stoffer?
Here.
Mr. Fury?
Here.
Okay. Would you all rise for the invocation and the pledge of allegiance? Father, we seek your guidance for the business that is before us. In planning for the future of the city of Twinsburg, give us vision. Guide us to make decisions that are not self-serving, but for the betterment of our community, so we can continue to move in a positive direction. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next we will move into election of the president. I will now open the floor for nominations. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Greg Bellin for president.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, then we will call roll on Mr. Bellin. Shannon, would you call the roll?
I have a second.
Do we have a second?
Do we need a second? All right, can I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Barr seconds. Any discussion?
Thank you.
Okay. Shannon, call the roll.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Bellin, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now
Thank you
take
very
your
much.
seats.
Yes.
Would you like to move seats now?
You know what, I'll
do
stay
that.
here for a minute, that's fine.
Well, you better come
You
on
wanna
here.
get- that's
but
fine.
I didn't know if you wanted everybody to
That's
move.
Oh, I need my name tag.
Yeah, mine too. Got a lot to move. Thank you.
You all set?
All set.
All right, next on the agenda is election of vice president. Are there any nominations?
Yes, I would like to nominate Scott Barr.
Any other nominations? Nominations? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Congratulations, Mr. Barr.
Congratulations.
Next on the agenda is appointment of committees.
Should have asked you. Running for mayor.
I do not plan on running for mayor, no.
I forgot to ask.
Mr. Scafidi this year will sit on planning, capital improvement, and parks and recreation. Ms. Walker will be on public safety, Twins Days, the Chamber of Commerce, and community relations. Ms. McFerrin will be on golf advisory board, public safety, ARB, and the volunteer firemen's board. Mrs. Stoffer will sit on public works, the environmental commission, and community relations. Mr. Barr will sit on finance, public works, and public safety. Mr. Fury will sit on the BZA, Treasury Investment Board, the Finance Committee, and the Tax Incentive Review. And I will sit on the Finance Committee, Public Works, Fitness Advisory, and the Charter Review. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the November 26th meeting. Any discussion?
I make a motion that the minutes are accepted as submitted.
I'll second.
Mr. Scafidi seconds. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Next on the agenda is any awards and presentations.
There are none.
Next is audience participation.
Yes. First, we have Bob Hughes.
Thank you.
Bob Thews, 2229 Demi Drive in the Meadowwood plan. I was absolutely flabbergasted with the discussion by council about the 2.5% increase in non-union employees. Former councilman, or person, Brian Steele, voted against it after citing a specific situation where a department head admitted that he had not done his job on at least 2 occasions. That was not shocking to me. We few in the audience understood exactly what he was saying. It was the response of one council member who acted like this was a surprise. The same surprised councilman had told me 4 years earlier that the signage ordinance was being rewritten. Just a couple meetings ago, this was the same councilman whom I reminded that the signage ordinance was not done after 4 years. Don't you recall that one of my biggest concerns was that the R7 zoning, which really needs updated, was going to go the same way as the signage ordinance. I wasn't entitled to give the council feedback, but the department head got up and admitted that the zoning was not up to date. So I went into detail how leaving this zoning without change will inevitably lead to a lawsuit by some builder who will say, he's got 17 variances, I want the same. And has been historically accurate, we will lose another lawsuit. You know, you had no problem telling me that there was a great displeasure with how I phrased the council's actions, but you missed the point. We will all pay for his mistakes, especially with the R7 zoning code error. And to this date, there's still no plan to change that. So now we have a department head that did not do his work on admittedly 2 different occasions, and what is his penalty? He gets a 2.5% pay increase. My gosh, work rules have really changed since I retired 5 years ago. Used to be if you did not reward failure to do work, you did not reward failure to not do your work, in case you used to be fired, but then again, this is city government, and since it is not their money, it's okay to reward incompetence. Now, I will make one comment about the comment made earlier about many things going on. I understand many things going on, and I spent 45 years in working in manufacturing, and there was never one item on the agenda at any one time. There was always multiple items on the agenda, and it wasn't a situation that you sat there and said, well, I have all day to make my mind up on one thing. There are always a lot of things going on, if it's any good business. So from the standpoint of somebody in council who's spent his whole life working in government and coming back and saying that, you know, it's busy, we all have been down that road, okay, from that standpoint. So since it's not their money, it's okay to reward incompetence. But it is my money, and I don't like how you're spending it. And to be truthful, you should not be asking for any more of my money in the upcoming year, because this same councilman said we gained over $2 million in a general fund. So there'd be absolutely no reason to want any more taxes or install any more fees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Next, we have Sue Clark.
1 second. Mr. Scafidi?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a quick comment. Yeah, I have spent most of my life in working for municipalities. And, you know, the reality is that if it was my staff and my crew, the only ones doing the project, I have every right and I could control exactly what goes on out there and when it happens and how it happens. When you're working with various agencies, which I'm assuming you never have, you've worked in your manufacturing facility, and you've worked just under that umbrella, okay? But when you're working with various government agencies or any other agencies that you're depending on, that you need to depend on to get work done, then it's a whole different ballgame. So I just wanted to point that out. I hope that answers your question. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Sue Clark.
Good evening, council, mayor, Dave. This is going to be a little out of sorts because we did the meeting a little different here tonight. But in the last council meeting, Joanne McPherron was on her way out the door, and I wished her a happy Thanksgiving. And I said, when we come back, you'll be council president. To my surprise, she looked me directly in the eyes, welling back tears, and said, that's not going to happen. Now, you all endorsed her. Her ward residents revoted her back in. She's done a great job from what I can see. So, my question to you is, why can she not have her turn at council president? Is it because she's a woman, or is it because she doesn't fit the Twinsburg pack, the United Pack? Now, I wasn't going to jump in, but I am for Sam. This whole thing about doing your jobs, and I'm not speaking for Mr. Thews, but to me, as a resident, when our ward council and our at-large are present in an issue that's going on in our ward, they're visible. You can see them. We had a ward issue in Ward 1, and our ward president, our ward council was not there for us. We have talked about that, him and I. So I can say for Mr. Thews that I agree that when you're present in your ward, your folks see it. That's what I think he's referring to. Not that they can't multitask, not that ODOT's not involved. He knew who he needed to go to get the project done. Greg, the mayor, he saw who was involved directly with the residents. You guys just were sworn in, and I guess that's going to be the accountability part. I want to say that I am totally disappointed in this council. It has nothing to do with the fact about running races. What happened here tonight to Mrs. McPherron was disgusting. I've dealt with that as a woman in my career, and I am very upset that this council would allow that to happen. You guys all know this is wrong to her. Very wrong to her. Every one of you.
I got this. Mr. Maestros? Have you ever discussed conflicts of interest regarding the ARB, BZA, and Planning Commission with Mrs. McPherron?
Yes.
How far back was the first time there was asked about a conflict of interest, if I may ask?
I'm not sure with Mrs. McPherron. I think my first conversation was when Mr. Cerasi was president. So I'm not sure when that was. 2, 3, I guess probably 3 terms ago, 3 years ago.
Thank you. So 3 years ago. I didn't vote for Mrs. McPherron tonight because I've confronted her on an issue for a few years. Mrs. McPherron has claimed that she has a conflict of interest regarding attending meetings that we have. The three primary meetings that council covers that meet the most are the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Architecture Review Board. In her 4 years, she has outright refused, first by stating a conflict of interest that the law director had told her multiple occasions doesn't exist, and then that she worked on evenings and was not willing to work those commissions. In the past 4 years, Mr. Scafidi's worked 146 meetings. Mr. Steele worked 124. Mrs. Stauffer worked 110. I had 82. Mr. Barr, in two years, had 52 meetings that he attended, and Greg had 31. Mrs. McPherron only had 32. So that's not really balancing the workload of the council, because each meeting is not on the same night as a council meeting. Those are separate evenings. Sam Scafidi spent basically 5.5 months of a year going to meetings because he was assigned to those. In my time, it's 16 years here, nobody's ever refused to cover a BZA ARB or Planning Commission assignment. Now, when there are conflicts, we cover for each other, but to say that this has nothing to do with a woman, this has absolutely nothing to do with it. It has to do with taking responsibility for your actions and not filling your duties as a council person. So you might disagree with me, but I addressed this publicly in January. In March, we voted to change council rules. It was 6-1. The only abstention was Mrs. McFerrin. And Mrs. McFerrin had absolutely no surprise that this wasn't going to go on, because this has been an outstanding issue for years. And that's why I chose not to support her for presidency. I'll also tell you that there are no rotation rules in council whatsoever as far as who becomes president of city council. Bill Hahn was a councilman here for 20 years. He was a council president once. Andy Ramito was a council person for 12 years. He was never a council president. The charter says that the council is the person that puts this together and elects their president. There are no guidelines. At one point there.
You did it in the last meeting, where you guys realigned.
Point of order.
Yeah.
You know, I listened to Bob talk about how I'm giving him false numbers, and he's angry that I'm not out in front of the roundabout. He has no idea how many times I've talked to the mayor and Amy regarding this. You know, and to tell you the truth, we just had an election, and the residents weren't that upset about that because Sam and I are still here. So I get that you're disgruntled. But to come here and tell us that we're being sexist or being abusive to Mrs. McFerrin is just wrong.
I think it's about that.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yeah, I would just like to ask Sue Clark, what issue did I not appear at in your ward?
Oh, CMRB really didn't.
Yeah, you mentioned a specific case. I'd like to hear which one it was.
It was the sober home. I called you, you never came, we were involved. I had numerous meetings here.
You get
Okay.
a point of order.
That's
She's done.
enough. Point of order.
Okay, all right.
Point of order.
All right.
Okay. The first night I met you at a Glenwood Acres meeting that I orchestrated and I called, okay? That's where I met you. Please, I let you talk, okay? I was here for you. I was here for all the residents, and I think you were there, okay? And I had the owners of that home here. I was out in front of this thing, and that was the biggest thing, because you wanted to go door to door and take it to another level. That was up to you, and I commend you for that, okay? What it did, I don't know what it did for you. What my meeting did exactly what I expected to do. As we sit here today, there is no sober home in that ward. There is no sober home in Glenwood Acres. So I rest my case, that's all. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Anyone else?
Yes. Next, we have Sheila Williams.
I want to come up here and talk to y'all. I was a little rough around the
As long as you're a
edges this
positive
morning.
person, we like that.
Yes, I'm going to tell you, I had the opportunity to go to Solon's swearing-in ceremony. A friend of mine was sworn in. And we argue, we fight, we fall out around here, but they do the same thing. And it was very interesting to me, the whole process of it. And, you know, they had 3 audience participations, no, 2. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm going to bring that up. They had 2. But my point is that no matter what community you live in, and that's what I said to Kraus last night, the arguments and the concerns are all the same. They're dealing with road construction and people can't get out their driveways. And there are people that feel neglected and mistreated by council members, as we have residents that feel that way too. And I felt that way myself. But one thing I will say about them and us, everyone loves their community. So, but I love mine even more after going to their council meeting last night. I just want y'all to know that. But I have a couple of things I want to go over real quick. I'm going to talk about the health department first. I brought the strategic plan that we put together for 2020 to 2022. I'm going to give it to Shannon. It's for you, the mayor, but if anyone wants to look at it, to see some of the things that we're looking at doing and talking about doing and on and on and on. So I'm going to give this to her. We received $2.48 million for infant mortality. It was all on the news, I think Sunday and Monday. The African American community has the highest in Summit County, and the health department is the pass-through for programs to document and to see what's going on with that. So I wanted to make you all aware that this was a big deal, and leading is a big deal. We have homes in Twinsburg that may have some lead exposure. Please have them contact the health department because we received a very large grant in relationship to that, and we can assist them. We also had a working session on maintaining your septic tanks because there are still septic tanks in the city of Twinsburg. Not a lot, but there are still wells and septics. So if they have any problems, to please have them contact the health department. Then I'm going to switch over to Kent State. It's official. We have a new name here in Twinsburg. It used to be called the Regional Academic Center. Now it's called the Twinsburg Academic Center. That has been an ongoing issue. The mayor, all of us have been very concerned that we have been carrying Geauga, for lack of a better word, with no recognition. And we even had T-shirts that none of us have really wanted to wear because it said Iraq, and we kept saying, why doesn't it say Twinsburg? So it is official. It's going to say Twinsburg Academic Center. There's going to be some sign changing. And in the future, as you all move forward and you talk about Kent State being here, please use Twinsburg in that conversation because that's a big deal for us to be able to say that. There's a change in management. We've changed good and bad, depends on who's sitting on the side of it. We have a new president. I know the mayor talked about it at the last council meeting I was at. He went down to the ceremony. And Nate Ritchie, who had been the vice president, came from Youngstown State, and he worked with President Warren for many, many years. He has stepped down from his position, and he's now teaching mathematics as a 10-year professor for Kent State University. We also have she's the interim senior vice president and provost. Her name is Melanie Tankersley. Did I say it correctly, Mayor? Tankersley? She's took the job that the president had. And Laura from the library asked her exactly what her job description was. And she says, I hold the prison in place. And then she started laughing. But she's in charge of anything to do with academics over all the campuses. And very high energetic, very nice. We had lunch with her this afternoon, had a chance to talk with her. And she shadowed the present president for almost a year. And so it was like a natural fit for her to go into that job position. Let me see my other notes. Talked about the name change. All letterhead and correspondence will have that. And she said that she was a big instrumental part in the name change. She had some students. She was working with one of the counselors. They got their acceptance letter and it said Geauga. And they got very upset. And she said, let's make this simple. So that's why I said, please encourage people to talk about Twinsburg in the sense of Twinsburg's Academic Center, because it's really a big push. And then today is Giving Tuesday. If you want to go on the website, if you're an alumni, there's matching dollars available and this sort of thing for it. And as I close, I'm going to talk about the lights. I heard Maureen talking to Amy, and I appreciated that. I've become an old person. When I pull out of my development, I'm hitting the curb because it's so dark. And I can only imagine my other neighbors where the average age in my development is 75. If they're up on the sidewalks, we'll know in the spring what it looks like. If we could figure out how to get them to really get us some lights before the snow flies, that's all I'm asking. And I know Amy's working hard doing it. And the 91 they're flying down and flying around. I'm happy to see it's open, but they are flying down and flying around. So with that said, I am happy to see that as winter is coming, everything is complete until spring. The landscaping looks good, and we've got some other things to do, but I want to thank everyone for that. Because as I learned in Solon last night, they have 4 streets blocked off, and if people don't leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, they can't get out their driveway to go to work. And it's been going on for 5 months, and they're talking about next spring, at least I could get out of the development. I may not have liked the noise and the different things, but I could get out. And congratulations to all of you. I wish you all the very best of luck, and I'll be around to criticize if criticism is needed.
Thank you. Anyone else, Shannon?
There is none.
Next is the mayor's report.
Good evening, everyone. Just going to highlight a few things going on here over the next couple of weeks. Luminosity is this weekend at 6 o'clock here at City Hall, so we'll be lighting up City Hall. And we're actually going to have a parade this year, so we've got a bunch of cars that have entered that'll be all lit up at night. We're going to go down the square and light up the square. So I encourage you to attend that. We also have Light the Night, which is the Hanukkah celebration we do up at the community center. That's on the 23rd. You don't have to be Jewish to attend that. We're typically all there every year, cooking latkes and doing whatever it is we need to do to help out for that event. There's also, our senior center is a very, very active senior center, and they do a holiday luncheon each year. This year, they're also doing a cocktail hour at the clubhouse, and they're going to have, and what I've been told is that it's not necessarily for like senior, so they're just basically, so I would be eligible. I think 50 and older is probably what they're targeting. But I encourage you, if you don't have anything to do on that Friday evening on 12/20, to come out to that. And then also we're doing a New Year's Eve celebration at the clubhouse. Tickets will be available. You can actually book a whole table, so if you want to come with a group, but just contact Abby to participate in that. And then lastly, I do want to mention and respond to Mr. Thew's comments. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and a lot of communications that I get directly from council with concerns from either residents or their own concerns about different things going on in the city. And I can assure you that I had conversations with every single councilman and discussed their concerns regarding the construction progress of the roundabout. It was a very difficult project for all of us because council hears from all of their constituents, and they share those concerns with me. And we work with the department heads, and it is frustrating, as Mr. Scafidi said, when you're dealing with multiple agencies on a project on a state route. I kind of, went off on ODOT in an email, and it has been. It's been a very long, frustrating project that, again, I'm glad we've come to the end of it, a little bit in the spring, but it happens all the time. There's different things that go on in the city that even the people sitting here don't see, and things that are happening, whether it's the conditions of a home, whether it's drainage issues, which everything that I have direct contact with council. So to say that they don't respond or they're not responsive and they're not visible, that doesn't mean that they're not out there working for the residents. So I just wanted to share that, and I appreciate the dialogue that we always have, because none of them are shy to pick up the phone and call me or call a department head, and we to make sure something gets taken care of for a resident. So I did want to share that, because I think they deserve the credibility for that, not just Mr. Bell and myself, because we all were working hard behind the scenes. I just happened to be the voice that screamed the loudest. So, but anyway, that's all I have this evening. So we have some department head reports. Amy, are you reporting? No? All right. Chris?
Good evening, council. Well, the service department's dealing with snow already. We are not on our winter shifts yet. They will be going on to shifts on Monday, next Monday the 9th. So we'll be on 24 hours, 5 days a week. But in the meantime, we're on a call-out procedure. They were called out this morning, doing a lot of pre-salting, brining to get us through the evening hours. So we're doing pretty well there. But next week, they'll be on 24-hour coverage during the week. With that coming up, we're trying to finish up a bunch of the other programs that we run. Branch chipping, we completed that in November with 566 stops, so it was a pretty heavy month. For the year, we had over 47, almost 4,800 stops for branch chipping, so that went real well. We're still leaf collecting. We actually had a period of time, I'm not sure if they're doing it right now, but the employees actually came to us and said, hey, we'd be willing to work till 7 o'clock at night for comp time. They came to us and said, yeah, you know, we know it's a tough time, winter's coming, we want to get these leaves picked up. So they came to us and so they worked a couple crews a night till 7 o'clock at night. So people are dedicated. I really appreciate them. So they're doing a great job. And we'll be out there with leaves and, you know, until we can't do it, until it's covered up with snow. So, but if we have to make any tweaks to the program next year, we'll do that. And but I think it's going pretty well. One of the issues I reported on was the guardrail report or guardrail repair on 91. That's all done. So, and I was glad to hear. I've talked to Amy about the state maybe doing a little bit of guardrail stuff. And you know, a lot of times for us it is price, but a lot of times it's just getting it done in a timely manner. So hopefully we can you know, get some help there. So we'll look at that. Other than that, we're doing the storm area checks. Continue to do that when we can. We'll be moving into some of the building maintenance repairs during the year. So we'll be on our normal winter schedule. So, so we're ready to go with that snow and ice. So that's my report.
All right, Chris, go ahead.
How many times roughly have you guys been through the city with the leaf stuff? I know my neighborhood, I think you've hit twice. I've seen some reports where you've hit some other areas 3 times. So would this be, or working on number 3? I mean, because it does seem like you guys are doing a great job.
We've been through 3 times. We started the 4th round, 11/20. So, yep. So we normally, I mean, we've gotten through the city as many as 7 times.
Wow.
in a year. So far, so they'll complete this 4th round. We'll hope for a 5th. So,
Thank you.
Chris, on average, how long does it take to complete a sweep of the city? Ish?
You know, of course it varies.
Sure.
When we get to the peak of the season, what we do, you know, we can send anywhere from 1 truck out to we actually sent 4 out this year because we held on to one of our old machines. But even with that, in the height of the season, it'll take us 2-3 weeks to get through.
Okay.
So at the beginning of the year, we can get through in a week.
Sure.
So, but yeah, with that 4th machine, that helped us this year, and then the guys volunteering to stay over helped as well. So.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris, quick question on the branch chipping. I know we're done for the year, but there's still some folks that have branches out there. Is anybody notifying them? I mean, even though they should know, because I think we put it out enough that we wrap it up at the end of November. But some people don't hear it or don't understand it, and they still put out branches, and they're on the, does anybody notify them, you or the building department, to say, look, our program's over, however, you can still get rid of your branches if you cut them in 4-foot lengths and bundle them. Waste Management, I'm assuming, will take them. I know some of the other haulers do, as long as they're bundled.
Yeah.
So, I mean, does anybody do that so they're not sitting there? Because we had, this summer while I was out campaigning, I had a guy, you know, he thought that we quit the program. We don't offer this anymore because his branches or leaves were there, but it was after the fact. It was after the program was over.
Yeah.
And he thought that we didn't provide that service anymore, so.
We could probably tag them. I mean, we don't.
Do you think that has any merit? I don't know. I think, sometimes I think it does, but.
Yeah, I'll look at it, yeah, sure. we'll get calls, you know, we'll respond to the calls we get, but
You tell them.
as far as, you know, piles being out there, we don't tag anything, but I'll talk to the foreman, maybe we'll put something
Maybe
together.
drop something on their door or
Sure.
something to say,
Yeah.
you know, the program's over, but here's how you can get rid of them.
Yeah,
Because they sit there, and I know, I can't remember where it's at, but I know one tree lawn has quite a bit out there.
Okay.
And,
all right.
but whatever, I just thought
Yeah.
I'd throw that out there.
No, that's a good idea, I'll look at that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chris, one of the residents, thank you. One of the residents gave me a call after they called Public Works, and one of your employees gave him my number, and you probably know who he was. Anyway, you were on my street, and I'm thinking, they're on my street, so they should be at your area within a couple days. Your guys were there the next day. And the reason why I know is because I drove down his street. He gave me his address. Then I called him, and he wasn't at home. But you don't know how great I felt, because I told him, I said, give the city within 24 to 48 hours, they will get to your street. And you did. With the next, you went to his street, and we talked, and he was really pleased. You probably know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, we've gotten a few of the calls.
So thank you so much for doing
Absolutely.
that.
But I don't want to take the credit for it, because it's kind of just a coincidence, is, you know, that's where they were in the route, and they,
Yes.
you know, so,
Yes,
but, yeah.
but it made my job easier.
Sure.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Change it around.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Sarah?
Good evening, council. Finance, we're still working with the Auditor of State on the performance audit. We supplied them with a little more information this week. They had some questions about our shift differential pay and our different contracts. We have an update meeting with them, an Auditor of State meeting scheduled for next week. Interest earnings through November are at $230,000. That's actually over our entire year interest earnings last year. So we're up 21.8% over where we were last year of $189,000. We're still working through budget presentations. We had golf and general government today. And then November financials, we are closing out, and we should have those out to you next week.
Thank you.
It's actually not on the agenda, but we do have a couple council communications and committee reports this evening. Mr. Barr?
Since our last meeting, none of my committees have met, but I do have a couple of motions for council this evening. These are from the Planning Commission. So, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to confirm the Planning Commission recommendations for the conditional use permit for Faithful Companion. That was the pet crematory. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Any discussion?
This was approved, or recommended unanimously by Planning Commission.
Yes, it was. Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Finally, another motion, and this is to confirm the Planning Commission recommendations for the conditional use for the Twinsburg Karate Institute. Again, this was recommended by the Planning Commission to go to council for a private recreational facility in that area. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, Shannon, would you call the roll?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
And that's all I have this evening. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Mrs. Stoffer?
I attended the Finance Committee tonight, but other than that, my committees have not met.
Okay. Mr. Scafidi?
Yes, thank you. The last Board of Zoning Appeals meeting was held on November 27th, and we had two appeals before the board. Appeal number 8, 2019, was tabled that evening because the applicant, who was the resident, was not present to state his case. He had a contractor here, and he was not able to show what the hardship case may be that they needed that variance. So the board tabled that one until the next meeting. I believe it'll be coming up at their next meeting. Appeal number 9, 2019, was presented by Pepsi Cola in the industrial area. They wanted a variance which requires a 50-foot front parking setback in an industrial district. They're asking for a 10-foot variance at their location on 1999 Enterprise Parkway, and merely to allow them for additional parking. They've run out of parking and they don't have any anymore. So the board voted and granted them that variance at a 4-0 vote. So at this time, I would like to make a motion that we waive the 30-day waiting period on appeal number 9, 2019. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury, second. Is there any discussion? Okay, Shannon, call the roll.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Okay, and that was the end of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and that's the end of my report tonight. Thanks.
Mrs. Walker, anything?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Fury?
Thank you. I attended the Planning Commission meeting of December 2nd, and there were 3 items on the agenda. A storage shed for the First Congressional Church. This is actually an Eagle Scout project that Brandon Kilpatrick is putting together, and he was in front of them for a final site plan. It was passed unanimously, so at this time I'd like to make a motion to confirm Planning Commission's approval of the site plan for First Congregational Church located in PF District. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes?
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Second item on the agenda was some additional parking for Pepsi-Cola. They needed 45 additional parking spaces. The conditions are approval of a site lighting plan and approval of a landscape plan. It was passed 5-0. Since this is a final site plan, it will also need a motion. So at this point, I make a motion to confirm the Planning Commission's approval of the final site plan for Pepsi-Cola Bottling of Ohio, Inc., located in an I-3 zone. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Scafidi seconds. Is there any discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Thank you. The last item on the agenda was another additional parking lot for Western Reserve Wire Products located at 1920 Case Parkway South. They have conditions that they have to provide a storm plan, a water summit soil program, and a long-term water maintenance program for the parking lot. This was also passed unanimously, and it requires a motion. So this time I'll make a motion to the Planning Commission to confirm the Planning Commission's approval of the site plan for Western Reserve Wire Products located in an I-3 zone. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Barr seconds. Discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
The next meeting for the Planning Commission will be on January 6th. Earlier this evening, I attended a Finance Committee meeting. We are finalizing budgets for the temporary that we can put in place next week, which will allow for adjustments through the first quarter as we get the actual closes for departments. We talked to Derek Schroeder regarding the clubhouse, which is looking at a 14.8% decrease in the operating fund. The restaurant and banquet facility is looking at 23.3% decrease in the operating fund. Brian Maynard's clubhouse group is looking at a 17.3% decrease in their operating expenses. And actually, he had a phenomenal year with the golf course, made almost $650,000.
952.
Pardon me?
952 was his gross.
950.
952,000 was the
Okay.
clubhouse.
All right, thank you. Sarah handled the golf maintenance on behalf of Jim Roberts. And the maintenance stayed the same. That's been pretty lean for a while. And then a general government fund. So these were all recommended to go to council. So we have recommended both the 220 appropriations as well as the 220 capital items, which will be finalized next week on 104/2019, which we'll have a second reading on tonight. We also had a meeting with Matt Sosinski, who is our bond counsel, that discusses options on how we can finance the long-term debt. You know, interest rates are down in the 2.0 for a AAA rating right now. That we can still But they believe there's a possibility for further decrease in the next 6 months. So the recommendation that we got from our bond counsel was to, again, finance at a 1% interest only, with the option to convert to a bond in the next year. So, but interest rates are significantly lower than we talked about in the past. 20 years, 1.88, 25 years, 2.01. And lastly, I just want to say the last statement of cash I had from is for the close in October. But again, our beginning balance of our general fund was $8.296 million. At the end of October, it was $10.703 million, for an increase of $2.4 million. And our unspent balance, which is the sum total of all the balances of all the accounts that fund the city, was $20.998 million, which is up $600,000 from the previous month. That's all I have. Oh, the next Finance Committee meeting will be on 1/28 in next year. And thank you very much.
None of my committees met, but the next Architectural Review Board meeting will be held on Thursday, December 5th, 6 p.m. here in council chambers. And the next Golf Advisory Board meeting will be held on Tuesday, January 21st, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. also here in council chambers. Next, we're on to legislation. We'll start with Ordinance 97-2019.
An ordinance amending Section 149 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Twinsburg regarding fees and deposits.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 97-2019. Is there a second?
I'll second. Yield.
Mr. Scafidi seconds. Discussion.
This is just updates some fees and deposits for the building department, so.
Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Ordinance 97-2019 passes 6-0. Next, we're on to Ordinance 104-2019.
The annual appropriation ordinance for 2020 approved by council for the estimates submitted by the mayor, providing for the ordinary expenses and other necessary expenses of the City of Twinsburg, Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020.
That stands on its first reading. Next is Ordinance 107-2019.
An ordinance approving the construction agreement for the water line extension located at 9802 Chamberlain Road.
And that is not on an emergency, so that's its first reading. Next up is Resolution 108-2019.
A resolution accepting an easement from the Twinsburg Community Improvement Corporation to the City of Twinsburg for a sidewalk improvement.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 108-2019. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Discussion?
The CIC owns two pieces of property that are next to the Dunkin' Donuts, and giving them the easement allows us, the city, to fix the sidewalks.
Anything else? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Resolution 108-2019 passes 6-0. Next up, Ordinance 109-2019.
An ordinance accepting the bid of Fetchco Excavating LLC for the 2020 Oakwood Drive Improvement Project.
That is its first reading. Next up is Resolution 110-2019.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement authorizing the Ohio Department of Transportation to perform bridge inspection program services within the City of Twinsburg Corporation limits.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 110-2019. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Barr seconds. Discussion?
This is a free program that the city engineer has reached out to the state to allow them to inspect what we would call bridges by definition, but we would not think of bridges. So the golf cart underpass under Glenwood Road, Dutton, there's some culverts and things of that nature. So this has no cost to the city whatsoever.
Anything else? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Resolution 110-2019 passes 6-0. Next up is Resolution 111-2019.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Summit County for guardrail maintenance located in the City of Twinsburg Corporation limits.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 111, 2019. Is there a second?
Yes.
Ms. Walker seconds. Discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Resolution 111, 2019 passes 6-0. Next up is Ordinance 112, 2019.
An ordinance amending the current year appropriations for the general revenue account as established in Ordinance 18, 2019, the appropriation ordinance for the city of Twinsburg for the year 2019 and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance.
No.
I'm sorry, I'd like to make a motion to put ordinance 112, 2019 on its third and final reading and declare an emergency. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Discussion?
The reason for the emergency is that we want to put $270,000 into a fund to cover for state grant money for the Chamberlain repair and the Liberty Ballpark. When the grants come in, it'll be reestablished, but we need to do this as an accounting issue now, and that's why it needs to be an emergency. Thank you.
Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Emergency passes 6-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 112, 2019 as an emergency. Is there a second?
A second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Any additional discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Ordinance 112, 2019 passes 6-0 as an emergency. Next up is ordinance 18, 2019.
113?
I'm sorry, I'm wrong page. Ordinance 113, 2019.
An ordinance amending Section 147 of the codified ordinances of the City of Twinsburg regarding employees generally.
And that is its first reading. Next, on to unfinished business, new business, and miscellaneous. Mr. Barr.
Nothing for me, other than I hope to see people at Luminosity on Saturday. It's always a fun event, and I believe the weather is looking favorable. Cold, but no rain, so hopefully we'll see you there. That's all I have.
Mrs. Stoffer.
I do have a few things. I guess I wanted to address the council president, because I think I should. We don't have a rotation, but we've followed one since I've been on council. Ms. McFerrin just simply, she didn't have enough votes right now, and it doesn't mean that everyone up here doesn't respect her. And I think that is, I think staying that is not in her best interest. I mean, we respect what she's done, how committed she is to this community. It is a problem because being council president requires time, a lot of work goes into it, and she has to run the meetings. And if you can't attend the meetings, then your vice president is the one that's going to be doing that. Now, she has a very successful job. She does very well, but she's on a lot of committees that may prevent her from being here through her job. Do you understand what I'm saying, Ms. Clark? Okay. So with that, I don't like how it went down, but I do understand. And I would not say that anybody up here did this because of any other reason, that they were more concerned about her commitment and being able to get to the meetings on time. She could clearly run a meeting. She's an intelligent woman. She's done a ton for this community. So that's all I have on that. Next, I would like to congratulate Mr. Bellin,
Thank you.
because you will do a fine job.
Thank you.
And Mr. Burr. And welcome, Daisy.
Thank you.
Sorry, this was not the best meeting for you to have to start off, but we welcome you. And finally, the Twinsburg Academic Center. Kent State University offers a number of bachelor's degrees that are available right here in this community. For about $6,800, you can go to school here and receive a 4-year degree. So I'd like to, yeah, it's an amazing opportunity. And I'm really happy that they've changed the name to the Twinsburg Academic Center, because I think now it puts us right in the middle of it all. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Scafidi.
Thank you. I just want to say, I just want to congratulate you, Mr. Bellin, and you, Mr. Barr, on being the president and vice president. I'm looking forward to your leadership this year, and also welcome to Daisy Walker to the council table. I know that we're all going to do a lot of good things this year.
Yes,
and
we are.
I'm excited that you're a part of that as well.
Thank you
So
so
thank you
much.
very much, and that's all I have.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Thank you. I didn't get a chance to tell Ward 2, thank you for voting for me and believing in me. So thank you, Ward 2. Also, congratulations to Mr. Bellin and Mr. Barr. You're going to do a great job. And I'm just absorbing a lot today, probably next week. But come January, look out. Look out.
Mr. Fury?
Nothing for me this evening, thank you.
I just want to say, Ms. Walker, welcome.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you, family and friends and the holidays, but I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to accomplish in 2020. So that's all I have this evening.
Mr. Maestros?
Thank you. Just want to welcome Mrs. Walker. We've had a chance to work together, so I don't think that's
Yes.
going to be a problem. I look
No
forward
problem.
to it. And I know that I don't have to ask you to ask questions. I know you'll ask questions.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Collins?
Just congratulations to Mr. Barr and Mr. Bellin. Welcome, Daisy. And also, I know that the deadline's coming up for this year's Santa Run for the fire department. So if you're interested in participating this year, make sure you get your gifts over to the fire department. That'll be on Sunday, December 15th.
Mrs. Buccigross?
Congratulations and welcome to Finance Committee, to my new Finance Committee.
Yes.
Next, we need to excuse Ms. McFerrin.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Scafidi? Is there
I'll
a second? Mr. Fury seconds. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. And now I'd like to make a motion to enter into an executive session to discuss matters pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 121.22 personnel. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. We will reconvene and report on the executive session.